I've always thought of myself as a survivor, someone who could weather any storm, no matter how hard it hit. But lately, I'm not so sure anymore. My name is Elena Carter, and right now, I feel like I'm drowning in the wreckage of my own life. It started with Mom. She's been battling addiction for years, heroin mostly, but she swore she had it under control this time. I wanted to believe her. I really did. So when she asked me to help pay off some debts by letting her borrow money from my savings, I said yes. What choice did I have? She's my mom. But then things got worse. Much worse. The house we grew up in, the one place that felt safe, was sold out from under us to cover her spiraling debt. Just like that, everything was gone. Now, here I am, sitting on the edge of an air mattress in a dingy studio apartment I can barely afford. It smells faintly of mildew and regret. There's a leak in the ceiling that drips steadily into a chipped coffee mug I found in the trash when I moved in. My dining table is a stack of textbooks left over from college courses I never finished. And every night, as I lie awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens outside, I wonder how long I can keep pretending everything's okay. The truth is, it's not okay. Not even close. My paycheck from the cafe, where I work part-time, barely covers rent, let alone groceries or utilities. I haven't told anyone about this. Not my friends, not my coworkers, definitely not Noah. He wouldn't understand. Nobody would. Noah Bennett is different. Sweet, kind, patient. Everything I'm not these days. We met 6 months ago at a mutual friend's birthday party, and somehow, against all odds, he actually liked me. Liked me. Not the version of myself I try to project, the confident, put-together girl who has her life together, but the real me. Or at least, what little of the real me he's seen so far. When he offered to let me move in with him last week, I hesitated. Living with your boyfriend after only half a year feels reckless, doesn't it? Especially when you're hiding so much. Like the fact that I didn't leave my old apartment because I wanted to, but because I couldn't pay rent. Or that Liam Harper, my ex-boyfriend, won't stop texting me late at night, asking if we can talk. Or that I lied about getting promoted at work just to seem less pathetic. But desperation makes people do stupid things. So I packed up my few belongings, a duffel bag full of clothes, a photo album I couldn't bear to throw away, and a box of mismatched kitchen utensils, and showed up on Noah's doorstep. He hugged me tight and told me everything would be fine. For a moment, I almost believed him. Still, there's this gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach, like I'm building a house of cards instead of a future. Every lie I tell chips away at the foundation, and sooner or later, it's all going to come crashing down. I know it will. The question isn't if, it's when. And yet, for now, I stay silent. Because lying is easier than facing the truth. Because admitting I need help means admitting I'm weak. Because sometimes survival isn't about fighting back. It's about holding on for just one more day. Even if that day might break you. Living with Noah should feel like a fresh start. It should feel safe, stable. Like I've finally caught my breath after months of running from disaster. But instead, it feels like walking on thin ice. Every word I say feels heavier than it should. Every smile a little too forced. Because the truth is, I'm not who Noah thinks I am. And the longer I stay here, the more I worry that he'll find out. Noah's apartment is nothing fancy, a one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. But compared to where I was living before, it might as well be a palace. The walls are painted a soft gray. The furniture is simple but clean, and there's always this faint smell of lavender from the candles he burns when he's stressed. It's cozy, warm. Everything I want my life to be but can't quite figure out how to make happen. At first, things were fine. Or at least they seemed that way. Noah went about his routine like nothing had changed. Leaving early for work, coming home late, asking me casual questions about my day over dinner. I played along, pretending I was adjusting seamlessly to our new arrangement, pretending I wasn't, lying through my teeth every time he asked about my job or my plans for the future. But then Liam showed up. It happened last Thursday. I was folding laundry in the living room when there was a knock at the door. My stomach dropped the second I heard it. Noah was still at work, which meant whoever was standing outside wasn't there for him. I cracked the door open just enough to see who it was. And of course, it was Liam. "Hey, Elena," he said, his voice low and calm, like we were old friends catching up instead of exes who hadn't spoken in months. "Can we talk?" My heart raced. What was he doing here? How did he even know where I lived? I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting Noah to walk in and catch me red-handed. "This isn't a good time," I muttered, keeping my voice steady despite the panic bubbling inside me. "It's important," Liam insisted, leaning closer. "I wouldn't have come if it wasn't." I didn't invite him in. Instead, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Noah wouldn't hear us talking if he came home early. The hallway smelled like stale carpet and cleaning supplies, and the fluorescent light above us buzzed faintly. Liam looked the same as he always had. Messy, dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that could cut right through you when he wanted them. "What do you want?" I snapped, crossing my arms over my chest. He hesitated, glancing around like he was making sure no one else was listening. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice. "I need your help with something. Something big. And before you say no, just hear me out. It affects both of us." I felt sick. Whatever this was, it couldn't be good. "You shouldn't have come here," I said firmly. "We're done, Liam. You need to leave." For a moment, he looked hurt, maybe even angry. But then his expression shifted, something cold and calculating flickering across his face. "Fine," he said, taking a step back. "But don't say I didn't warn you." And just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with my pulse pounding in my ears. When Noah got home later that night, I acted normal, or at least as normal as I could manage. He didn't mention anything unusual, but I could tell something was off. He kept glancing at me sideways while we ate dinner, like he was trying to piece together a puzzle he didn't fully understand. "You seem distracted tonight," he said finally, setting down his fork. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." He nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. That's the thing about lies. They never exist in isolation. One lie leads to another, and another, until the whole structure starts to crumble under its own weight. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Noah slept beside me, I couldn't stop thinking about what Liam had said. Something big. Something that affected both of us. Whatever it was, it scared me. Not because I thought Liam would act on whatever threat he was implying, but because I knew deep down that I couldn't keep hiding forever. Sooner or later, the cracks would show. And when they did, I wasn't sure Noah would forgive me. For the first time, I wondered if I'd made a mistake moving in with him. Was I using him? Taking advantage of his kindness? Or was this just survival, finding shelter wherever I could, even if it meant burying pieces of myself along the way? Didn't have answers. All I had was the sinking feeling that I was running out of time. The days following Liam's visit felt like walking a tightrope. Every interaction with Noah was tinged with unease, every conversation laced with unspoken tension. I kept waiting for him to confront me about something, anything, but he didn't. Instead, he grew quieter, more distant. It was subtle at first. Fewer questions about my day, less enthusiasm when I tried to share bits of myself. but the change was there, lingering beneath the surface like a storm brewing on the horizon. I told myself it was all in my head, that I was overthinking things because of Liam's cryptic warning. Maybe Noah was just stressed from work or distracted by some project he hadn't mentioned yet. Or maybe he was finally starting to see through me, the real me, and realizing how much of a mess I truly was. Whatever the reason, it made me cling tighter to the lies I'd been spinning since the day I moved in. If I could just hold everything together long enough, maybe the cracks wouldn't widen into chasms. Maybe I could convince him, and myself, that I deserved this second chance. But life has a way of dismantling even the best-laid plans. It started with small things. A text message from Liam that popped up on my phone while I was cooking dinner one evening. Noah glanced at the screen as I fumbled to silence it, his brow furrowing ever so slightly. "Who's that?" he asked casually, though there was an edge to his voice I couldn't ignore. "No one," I said quickly, shoving the phone into my pocket. "Just spam." He nodded, but the look in his eyes told me he didn't believe me. Then came the envelope. It arrived in the mail a few days later, addressed to me in bold black letters, "Past due notice." My stomach churned as I stared at it, knowing exactly what it meant. The landlord from my old apartment had sent another reminder about the unpaid rent I owed, a debt I'd hoped would disappear if I ignored it long enough. I tore open the envelope and scanned the contents, my hands trembling. They weren't messing around anymore. If I didn't pay soon, they were threatening legal action. Panic surged through me, sharp and suffocating. There was no way I could cover that amount. Not on my barista salary, not without dipping into the savings I'd promised myself I wouldn't touch. "What's that?" Noah asked, leaning over my shoulder as I stood frozen in the kitchen. I shoved the paper back into the envelope before he could read it. "Nothing important," I muttered, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Just junk mail." His expression darkened. "Elena." "I'm serious," I insisted, avoiding his gaze. "You don't need to worry about it." But Noah wasn't the type to let things slide. He pressed further, his tone firmer now. "If it's nothing, why won't you show me?" I hesitated, my mind racing for an excuse. "Because it's personal," I shot back, sharper than I intended. "Not everything is your business, okay?" The words hung between us like smoke, thick and acrid. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine," he said quietly. "Keep your secrets. But don't act surprised when people stop trusting you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Trust. That fragile, invisible thread holding relationships together. And I was unraveling it piece by piece. Things only got worse from there. Later that week, I found myself staring at my laptop screen during a slow shift at the cafe, debating whether to send Liam a message. Part of me wanted answers, to know what he meant when he said he had something big to tell me. Another part screamed at me to leave it alone, to cut ties completely and hope he disappeared for good. In the end, curiosity won out. I typed out a quick text. "What did you mean the other day?" "What's going on?" he replied almost instantly. "We need to meet. Alone." My chest tightened. Meeting him felt like playing with fire, but I couldn't shake the feeling that ignoring him might make things worse. Reluctantly, I agreed to see him, after my shift ended. When I arrived at the park where we'd arranged to meet, Liam was already waiting on a bench near the fountain. He looked different somehow, more intense, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "You shouldn't have come," he said as I approached, his voice low and urgent. "Then why did you ask me here?" I snapped, folding my arms across my chest. "Because you need to know the truth," he said, standing up. "About why I've been trying to reach you. About what happened last year." My heart skipped a beat. Last year, the memory I'd buried deep inside me, the one I swore I'd never think about again, was clawing its way to the surface. Before I could respond, Liam pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my blood run cold. It was a screenshot of an email chain from my old boss to HR about me. And suddenly I understood why Liam had been so insistent. The walk home felt endless. Each step weighed heavier than the last, like gravity itself was conspiring against me. By the time I reached Noah's apartment, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. I knew I couldn't keep lying to him. Not about this, but I also knew the truth might destroy whatever was left of us. As I opened the door and stepped inside, I caught sight of Noah sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. His expression softened when he saw me, but only for a moment. Then his eyes narrowed, and I realized he was holding something in his hand. A bill. My stomach dropped. "Care to explain this?" he asked, his voice calm but dangerous. I froze, unable to speak. The cracks were widening, and I didn't know how to stop them. All I could do was brace for the fall. The room felt smaller than usual, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. Noah held the bill in his hand like it was a weapon, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. His eyes bore into mine, searching for answers I wasn't ready to give. "This isn't just junk mail, is it?" he said, his voice low but cutting. "It's from your old landlord, for unpaid rent." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. My throat felt dry, my mind racing to fabricate some excuse that would make this all go away. But deep down, I knew it was useless. The evidence was right there in his hands, proof of yet another lie I'd told him. "Noah, I can explain," I managed finally, my voice trembling. "Can you?" he shot back, his tone sharper now. "Because every time I ask you about something, you shut me out. You lie. And now this shows up. And suddenly I'm wondering how much of what you've told me is even real." His words stung, not because they were unfair, but because they were true. Every accusation he threw at me landed like a punch to the gut, each one hitting its mark. "I didn't mean to lie to you," I said, my voice breaking. I didn't want you to think less of me. I didn't want you to see how messed up my life really is." Noah stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the money or the rent or whatever else you're hiding. It's about trust, Elena. How am I supposed to trust you when you won't tell me the truth?" His frustration was palpable, radiating off him in waves. I wanted to reach out, to reassure him that I could fix this, that I could be better. But I couldn't move. All I could do was stand there, frozen, as the walls I'd built around myself began to crumble. And then he dropped the bomb. "You know what the worst part is?" he said, stopping mid-pace to face me. "I did some digging after Liam showed up last week. Turns out you weren't exactly honest about your job either." My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. On it was an email chain, a conversation between him and someone named Claire, who identified herself as the HR manager at the company where I supposedly worked. "She says you were fired months ago," Noah continued, his voice colder now. "For falsifying expense reports. Is that why you left your old apartment? Because you lost your job and couldn't pay rent?" The world tilted beneath my feet. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. How had he found out? How had everything unraveled so quickly? "It's not what it looks like," I whispered, though even I didn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. "Then what is it, Elena?" Noah demanded, his voice rising now. "Tell me the truth for once." Tears streamed down my face as I sank onto the couch, my legs unable to support me anymore. I buried my face in my hands, trying to block out the weight of his gaze. "I messed up," I admitted finally, my voice barely audible. "I made a mistake at work. I tried to cover it up, and when they found out, they fired me. I didn't know what to do, so I lied. To everyone. To you. I thought if I pretended everything was fine, maybe it would be. Maybe no one would find out. Noah stared at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I wanted to believe in you, he said softly. I wanted to help you. But I can't keep doing this if you won't let me in, if you won't be honest with me. What are you saying? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. I'm saying... He hesitated, his jaw tightening. I think you need to leave. The words hit me like a freight train. Leave? No. Not again. Not after everything. Please, Noah, I begged, tears streaming faster now. I'll fix this, I promise. Just give me another chance. But he shook his head, his eyes filled with sadness rather than anger. I can't, Elena. Not like this. You need to figure things out on your own before you can move forward. With anyone. That night, I packed my things in silence. Noah stayed in the other room, giving me space but making it clear he meant what he'd said. As I zipped up my duffel bag and glanced around the apartment one last time, I realized how much I'd taken for granted. His kindness, his patience, his willingness to let me stay despite knowing so little about me. Now it was gone. All of it. Standing on the sidewalk outside his building, suitcase in hand, I felt the full weight of my mistakes pressing down on me. The lies, the secrets, the choices that had led me here. It was all my fault. But as I wiped away my tears and started walking toward the bus stop, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt raw, exposed. But also strangely free. Free from the need to pretend. Free from the fear of being seen for who I really was. Maybe losing everything wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. Something real. The first few days after leaving Noah's apartment were a blur of sleepless nights and endless self-loathing. I bounced between cheap motels and couches offered reluctantly by acquaintances, each place feeling more suffocating than the last. The guilt was relentless, gnawing at me like a wound that refused to heal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's face, the hurt in his eyes, the quiet resignation in his voice when he told me to leave. But it wasn't just Noah who haunted me. Liam's words echoed in my mind too, taunting me with their implications. That email chain he'd shown me in the park. It hadn't been random or meaningless. It had been deliberate, calculated. A reminder of the mess I'd left behind. And now, it seemed, he wanted to drag me back into it. I avoided his calls for as long as I could. But eventually, curiosity and fear got the better of me. One evening, sitting on the edge of a sagging motel bed with nothing but the hum of the air conditioner for company, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. Elena, he said, his tone smug, almost triumphant. I knew you'd call. What do you want from me, Liam? I demanded, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound strong. I already told you, he replied smoothly. We need to talk. In person. No games this time, I snapped. Just tell me what's going on. There was a pause, long enough to make my stomach churn. Then he spoke again, his voice low and menacing. You remember that little incident at your old job, don't you? The one that got you fired, my breath hitched. Of course I remembered. How could I forget? Well, Liam continued, it turns out someone higher up didn't appreciate being implicated in your little scheme. Someone who has connections, and they're not happy about how things turned out. My heart sank. This was worse than I'd imagined. What does that mean? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. It means they're looking for answers, Liam said. "And if they can't find them, they might start pointing fingers elsewhere, like at Noah." The room spun around me. Noah. He was threatening Noah. "You wouldn't dare," I spat, anger rising in my chest. "Try me," Liam shot back, his voice cold. "Unless, of course, you want to help me clear my name instead." I ended the call without another word, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Clear his name? After everything he'd done, to me, to others. I couldn't believe he had the audacity to ask. But what choice did I have? If I ignored him, Noah could get dragged into this mess, and after everything I'd already put him through, I couldn't let that happen. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my motel room, staring at the blank screen of my laptop. For hours, I debated my next move. Should I confront Liam, head-on, expose him for the manipulative liar he was? Or should I cut my losses and disappear, leaving both him and Noah behind? In the end, I chose neither. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. To uncover the truth, not just about Liam, but about myself. About the choices I'd made and the consequences they carried. It wasn't easy. Tracing the threads of my past mistakes felt like peeling back layers of scar tissue, exposing wounds I'd spent years trying to ignore. But slowly, painfully, pieces began to fall into place. I discovered emails, documents, even recorded conversations that painted a clearer picture of what had really happened at my old job. And then I found it. Proof that Liam had been involved too. Not just peripherally, but deeply. He'd been the one pulling strings, orchestrating the very scheme that had gotten me fired, all while keeping his hands clean, or so he thought. Armed with this new information, I made a decision. 3 days later, I stood outside Noah's apartment building, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know if he'd let me in, let alone listen to what I had to say. But I owed it to him, to us, to try. When he opened the door, his expression was guarded, wary. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice flat. "I came to explain," I said quickly, holding out a folder filled with the evidence I'd gathered. Everything. No more lies. For a moment, he just stared at me, uncertainty flickering across his face. Then he stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. As I sat down on the same couch where we'd argued only weeks before, I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told him everything. The fraud at my old job, Liam's involvement, the threats he'd made against Noah. I showed him the documents, the recordings, the emails. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "For everything. You deserved better than me." Noah was silent for a long time, his brow furrowed as he processed everything I'd said. Finally, he looked at me, his expression softening. Slightly. "This isn't going to fix everything overnight," he said quietly. "But I believe you, and I'll help you figure this out, if that's what you really want." Relief washed over me, so overwhelming I could barely breathe. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely audible. But as I left his apartment later that night, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Confronting Liam wouldn't be enough to undo the damage I'd caused. Not to Noah, not to myself. Redemption wasn't something that could be handed to me. It had to be earned, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to fight for it. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of action and reflection. Armed with the evidence I'd gathered, and Noah's reluctant support, I decided to take Liam down. Not out of revenge, but because it was the right thing to do. He had manipulated me, used my mistakes against me, and tried to drag innocent people into his web of lies. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. I went straight to HR at my old company, presenting them with everything I'd uncovered about Liam's involvement in the fraud scheme. At first, they were skeptical. After all, was the one who'd been fired for falsifying expense reports. But when I showed them the emails and recordings, their skepticism turned into shock. Within days, an internal investigation was launched, and Liam's name quickly became public within the company. It wasn't long before the fallout reached him personally. His boss called him into a meeting, and by the end of it, he was escorted out of the building. Rumors spread like wildfire. Liam had been suspended pending further investigation, and whispers of criminal charges began circulating. For once, justice felt tangible. But as satisfying as it was to see Liam held accountable, I knew this wasn't just about him. It was about me too. About owning my part in what happened and making amends where I could. Noah helped me navigate the aftermath. Though we weren't back together. Not yet. Maybe never. He stood by me in ways I hadn't expected. He encouraged me to seek therapy, to unpack the emotional baggage I'd been carrying for years. "You can't move forward until you deal with the past," he told me gently during one of our late-night conversations. So I did. I found a therapist who specialized in trauma and accountability, and though the sessions were often painful, they gave me clarity. For the first time, I started to understand why I'd made the choices I did. The fear of failure, the need for control, the desperate desire to be someone worth loving. With her guidance, I also reached out to my mom. It wasn't easy. Talking to her meant confronting the pain she'd caused me over the years. But I realized that holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone. When I finally visited her sober living facility, I found her sitting in a small garden, reading a book. She looked older, frailer, but there was something peaceful in her expression that I hadn't seen in years. "Hey, Mom," I said softly, taking a seat beside her. She glanced up, surprised but pleased to see me. "Elena," she murmured, closing her book. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. "But I wanted to try, to start over." We talked for hours, about her struggles, my struggles, the broken promises and missed opportunities that had defined our relationship. By the end of the visit, we both cried. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. With Noah's help, I landed a temporary job at a local nonprofit that provided financial counseling to low-income families. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose, a chance to use my experience to help others avoid the same pitfalls I'd fallen into. By the time spring rolled around, I'd saved enough money to rent a modest apartment of my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A clean slate, a fresh start. On the day I moved in, Noah came over to help me unpack. "You've come a long way," he said as we assembled furniture in the tiny living room. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied honestly. He smiled faintly, but there was sadness in his eyes. "Doesn't mean things are fixed between us, though." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know, and I respect that. But thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." As the sun set that evening, casting golden light through the window, I sat alone on my new couch, surrounded by boxes still waiting to be unpacked. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt hopeful. There was still work to be done. On myself, on my relationships, on the future I was slowly piecing together. But for now, I was content. Content to sit in the quiet, to breathe deeply, to let go of the weight I'd carried for so long. Because sometimes, survival isn't about running from the storm. It's about learning to stand tall in the rain. And finally, I felt strong enough to do just that.